Today, what we're going to be talking about is this transition from Universal Analytics over to GA4. It's something that we all are going to have to do. It's something that's going to be pushed upon us in literally 2 weeks from now. And so we got to get ready for it. We want to help you feel comfortable. As Ray said, I love the way you put it, Ray. It's going to help us just kind of understand that, hey, it's different. It's not necessarily terrible. It's just different. And we want to kind of help you go through that today. And so there's really going to be like 3 parts to the meeting today. First, we're going to just talk about the differences. And then we'll jump over and actually look at GA4 and just kind of, Ray's going to give us a bit of a tour of the land, if you will, of the landscape. And then Ray's got a presentation we'll take a look at, and then I'll point you to some resources at the very end. And so, Ray, let's just start with, kind of the side-by-side comparison, right? Like you said a little bit earlier, it's not the end of the world. It's not like all of a sudden, come July 1st, we're not going to be able to track things. It's just different, right?
Yeah, it's a different interface. It's a different UX, and essentially it's a different piece of software. And I think that's the intimidating part is that, and Paul, the point you made, it's being forced upon us. We have no choice. We got to deal with it. But the fact that it was being forced upon us and it's a new piece of software and a new data model has been pretty intimidating and kind of infuriating, but it is, this is the, to use the cliche, this is the hand we've been dealt with. So, let's get up under the hood and figure it out. And I will say that the resources that are out there now have become, in the last 3 months, have become exponentially better in terms of learning about the product. And I will warn everybody, don't watch any of the Google tutorials. They were written and designed by engineers for engineers. Every time I've gone through one of them, I left with more questions than I had when I started the tutorial. So, and Paul, you've got a whole list of stuff at the end of the seminar,
absolutely,
to share with everybody to help people get on their way. And hopefully this will be a good beginning for all of you.
Yeah. And, Ray, you touched on a couple of things that I just wanted to add to it. And that is, a lot of people don't realize that GA4 is not just the next version of Universal Analytics. It's literally a different product. In fact, a little bit of Universal Analytics or Google Analytics history, because I was around back then when they actually got into the analytics business. They bought a company, I think it was like 15 years ago, maybe longer, called Urchin. Urchin was out there providing analytics, and they bought Urchin, and that's what Universal Analytics originally was built on top of. And so fast forward to GA4, they actually bought another company, and I can't remember the name of the company that GA4 was built on top of. Ray, do you remember? Firebase. Yeah. And it was originally designed to help people track activity inside of apps and non-website type activity, because more and more companies were getting into apps and they wanted to be able to provide tracking to companies that had a website and apps. And then from there, they developed it out to become GA4, and then they decided to sunset Universal Analytics. So what that means is it's completely a different product. It's like going from Salesforce as your CRM to HubSpot as your CRM. So it's completely different. It's going to do basically the same things, but it's built on a totally different code base. Am I saying that right, Ray?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it was designed, Firebase was designed for mobile and to measure mobile taps, clicks, and scrolls. But and it's funny, the UTM code, the U and UTM, which we still use, is Urchin.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
right. I forgot about that, Ray. Yeah. The U is Urchin all the way back to the company that they bought. Another big difference in my mind is, and maybe this is because of the Urchin background, is that tool was really designed to be simple to use. And, I've been around technology for a long time. And one thing I've always learned is there's this trade-off. When something is simple to use, it's not very flexible. But that's one thing that's been great about Universal Analytics from day one is, you go in, there's like 150 you just log in, there's all these reports, you just click around, there they are. super easy to use, but it's not very flexible. And Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, but GA4 is like the opposite. It's super flexible. There's so many things we can do, but in, paying for flexibility, we're losing simplicity. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think so. But as I have gotten more familiar with the product, it's become a little easier. But I think, there was this steep learning curve, and I think the learning curve was more frustration that A, this is being forced down our throats. B, we're losing a tool that we got to know pretty intimately. And C, we got this newfangled thing. Man, I'm sounding like an old man, I guess, because I am. But yeah,
I'm not gonna say anything, Ray.
Yeah, but yeah, there's some solutions here, and that's something we're going to get into, especially on the reporting end here.
Yeah. So Ray, you were telling me when we were getting ready for this meeting, and actually when you were educating the whole company at Vindy Digital about how Universal Analytics is really 3 tools built into one, but in the GA4 world, they're really kind of teasing those 3 different pieces apart. Can you explain that a little bit? How is GA4 really, or how was Universal Analytics like 3 things built into one, and how is GA4 going to really just one piece of those 3 things?
Well, so you look at the Universal Analytics, it was the switchblade. We could do everything there. We can configure how we wanted our data to look and model. We could do reports from there. So GA4, you have to look at it. The problem with GA4 I still have is that to use it properly, it's 3 disparate pieces of software. You have Google Tag Manager, you have to go to configure everything, events specifically. You have GA4 itself, the platform itself, that's the business intelligence engine. But it's limited on the reporting, which was your first point, Paul. So then the third part is either Looker Studio, which was it's the new name for Google Data Studio, which all the data that you have and created in intelligence, you can then export that into Looker Studio and then use that to report up to the C-level. Problem with Tag Manager, GA4 is actually kind of, we're gonna show you, it's pretty easy to use and to get the stuff that you need, but to configure it, it requires a different level of complexity and not programming chops, but you gotta kind of know your way around Boolean statements. And then the third part is the reporting, and we've got a solution. There's a lot of solutions out there, which I heartily endorse. Looker Studio, to me, is very, very difficult to get data in and to visualize it in a way that makes sense to your stakeholders.
I'm 100% convinced, Ray, that Looker Studio is Google's attempt at monetizing the visualization component. So stay tuned for that. I'm sure. And they're already crippling how many times that Looker Studio can call GA4 to get the data. And I just know that they're getting ready to monetize that big time. So stay tuned for that. But I think that, and honestly, that's probably one of the reasons why they pulled out the visualization component and made it not as visually capable, because they're hoping that everybody's going to move to Looker Studio. Who knows why they changed Data Studio to Looker Studio? I have no idea, but I think they're getting ready to monetize that. Another big change, Ray, is just the data model, right? So this is sounds like bad news, but I think it's actually good news, right? Because we're going from sessions to events. Is that right?
Yeah. So everything was based on sessions. How many times a visitor came and what they did on the web, and how many sessions they had when they were on your website. And now it's a totally different data model, which makes historical data harder to benchmark and harder to use going forward. But there's some workarounds with that. Not cheap, but there are some workarounds for that. But in GA4, everything is event-based.
Yeah.
And the idea is also that we can track now if somebody hits your website on a laptop, goes home, and then hits your website again on a mobile phone, and then maybe goes to a tablet. we can track all that very easily,
Right.
inherently within the platform, which you couldn't do in universal analytics. Now, remember, everybody on this call, we do B2B marketing. And so that sounds really great for a lot of businesses, especially for e-commerce. But for us, we're doing high consideration purchases and trying to, get the phone to ring for our clients. And our clients name almost every one of our clients, with very few exceptions, their journey starts on a desktop and ends on a desktop in terms of a conversion. So,
right. And their journey might start on LinkedIn or might start somewhere else other than your website. And that's also one of the reasons why a Looker Studio or a data visualization tool might be really important, because, so much of the activity today is not on your website. But I want to touch on something that you said, these sessions versus events. This is really a good thing, in my opinion, because the sessions, the way I've always thought about sessions, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, but it's very page centric. So think about the early days of universal analytics, and we wanted to track conversions. We had to have a thank you page in order to track a conversion, because the old UA model was built on sessions. Did they make it to this page? If they did, we can set that as a conversion. That was a real problem for other things that we wanted to measure that might have shown us the buyer journey, if you will, clicks on a page, scroll on a page, watching a video, all those things we could not do with universal analytics because it was a session-based data model. Now, they implemented Google Tag Manager a few years ago. That helped us get to the bottom of some of that. But one thing, if you follow along with some of the stuff I share on LinkedIn or any of our other content, I'm talking about how we need to start removing the gate and removing forms, especially in the mid-funnel. And the best way to monitor progress, if you don't have a page to track something, is through events. And so, one thing I do love about GA4 is right out of the gate, because it is built on an event-based data model, clicks basically on anywhere on your site, or motions on your site, or on an app, or on a device. We can track all that and get all that into seeing the buyer journey a whole lot better than we could with universal analytics. Am I saying that right, Ray?
Yeah, and one of the metrics that's integral to this move is engagement and engagement rate. So to your point, a session is just somebody on your site. Well, who cares? And the bounce rate was predominant. It was an important metric on universal analytics, whereas in GA4, engagement rate, which is measured by events, and events are taps, clicks, and scrolls. So it's easier now to see your target audience and how they engage with your site. And we're going to talk about engagement rate here in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
and
great point, Paul.
Another big difference is these data streams, right? So in universal analytics, we had views. Like when you went into universal analytics, you could have your domain and you could have the filtered view, the unfiltered view, all those types of things. Views are gone, but they're replaced with data streams, right, Ray?
Yeah. So everything, the taxonomy now is an account and then a property. Boom. End of story. So, and then you configure everything how you want to see and measure those events aligning with your business objectives. You do that in Tag Manager, and then you can see it and then gain intelligence from the GA4 engine.
Right.
So,
and part of that, one of the things I'm excited about is something you touched on already, and that is, with data streams and not views, it's so much easier to configure cross-domain tracking. It's so much easier to configure things that happen on a mobile device versus things that happen on the desktop, following that user. Like you said, in our world, Ray, oftentimes in the B2B world, the conversion's happening on a desktop, but maybe they found you on LinkedIn, watching a post on LinkedIn, clicked on something, they're looking at your content like a blog on a mobile device, but ultimately they come back to their desktop, do a search, end up on your website from their desktop. We can now see that so much better with GA4 than we could with universal analytics.
Yeah, and the big thing is engaged sessions. GA4 they did add bounce rate back into this because the community cried and screamed, and we all ranted and raved. But really, you want to move away from that, and you want to look at engaged sessions. And they kind of lowered the bar, in my opinion. So, like an engaged session now is a session someone was on the website or on a page on the website for longer than 10 seconds. That means they were engaged with your website. So, and there's 3 criteria. We're going to get to that into the later in when we get to the deck here. But engagement is the key metric.
Ray, I'll tell you, I've always hated bounce rate. And for any of our clients that are listening in today, we've talked about bounce rate a lot over the years, but I've never, ever liked bounce rate. And one of the reasons why I never liked bounce rate is because we're big into content marketing. We love content marketing. We love to write long form content, have it live on your website, get it crawled by Google, get good search engine ranking for those keywords, and then drive people out of sites like Google onto your website where you deliver a really impactful piece of information. But if they were searching for a long form topic and they land on your blog and your blog's 1,000 words or 1,500 words, and you answered the question that they were looking for, they could be engaged, but they would be a bounce. And so what I love about engagement rate is if they spend 10 seconds on your site, then you're showing them as an engaged visitor, which makes blogs, which kind of had a false negative, if you will, that they weren't working. The reality is they were, because you did a great job answering the question that the user had in the first place.
Yeah, especially top of funnel. That's a really good point. We're trying to create demand for our products and for our businesses. And, you almost got penalized for brand impressions because, the bounce rate was your website sucks rates and how bad does it suck? But, right. You have a really good point here. So the idea is we're moving to engagement here.
Yeah. And so we'll look at that. We're going to do a tour here in a little bit. We'll go through that. But I know you touched on Looker Studio, just a couple of things about Looker Studio that maybe we haven't talked through is that there are alternatives, right? We don't have to go to Looker Studio to get a data visualization tool. I mean, you can certainly and you'll see this when we get over there, use GA4 to get data. It's not going to give you what's going on other platforms, but it will tell you what's going on your domains, mobile apps, etc. But even if I want a more of a dashboard view and I want to look at my entire digital footprint beyond my website, Data Studio, Looker Studio was an option, but there are a lot of other options out there, right? And if I want those, I have to pay extra even on Looker Studio today to even get those data feeds.
Yeah, the data feeds. And what we mean by data feeds is, you want to have a C-level dashboard so that your C-suite and even you and us as B2B marketers, we can go one place and we can see all our data. We can see LinkedIn paid, LinkedIn organic, Facebook paid, Facebook organic, and our website data. To do that in Looker Studio, you've got to pay for data feeds from LinkedIn, from any other website. It can get really, really expensive.
Yeah. One thing I love about dashboards too, I'm sorry to jump in, Ray, but when we think about holistic omni-channel full funnel marketing, and we're doing demand gen and top of the funnel, and we're promoting zero-click content where we may not be trying to drive traffic to our website, but ultimately we're trying to build awareness, build a retargeting pool that's going to ultimately move people through their buyer journey with us. I want to measure performance holistically. I want to see how much money did I put into the market? How many outcomes did I get based on that investment? And then what was my cost per outcome? It's really hard to do that without some kind of a dashboard software. Certainly, you're not going to be able to do that with GA4. And so definitely, I think if you aren't thinking about a dashboard software tool today, that's something that you might want to look into. Hey, last topic, Ray, before we jump over to do a quick tour. There's a lot of confusion about when is Universal Analytics actually going away. So is it like, oh my gosh, July 1st, everything's gone, the world erupts, apocalypse is happening, there's no more data, everything's gone? What really happens on July 1st?
Yeah, so it'll stop recording data for your websites on July. Universal Analytics will stop operating and functioning on July the 1st. You can still download all your data, but you have your historical data, but you'll only have till December 31st of this year. 1 January 2024, that data you won't have access to anymore, which is a whole nother conversation because The data models have changed, right? We went from sessions to events. And, there's also been historical data is, Google algorithm changes there's been thousands of them. So looking at your data from 2016 to this month, May versus May of 8 years ago, there was an argument out there that, and I pretty much subscribe to this, that data, I don't know that there's much utility in that data, that historical data. If you think it is, there's two ways you can take care of that data. You can download it into a CSV, or you can, and that you're prompted to in Google Analytics 4 and the setup is to establish a link with BigQuery. And BigQuery is a big data warehouse where you can store. You have to do it in 6-month chunks. You can download your historical data, but then to manipulate it to get it to look like the data in GA4, you need to be proficient in SQL. I'm not proficient in SQL. I'm a digital marketer. I'm spending my time on a master's level branding course right now. I'm not going to go learn SQL. So in my opinion, you're going to be able to store your data for 14 months. But again, Google algorithm changes. Who knows what else is going to be coming down the pike with Google now that they're pushing us around a lot. I don't know that data is going to do you any good.
Yeah.
Forward.
So I'm going to just recap what you just said, because it's really important. So Universal Analytics is going to stop recording any visitor activity starting July 1st. So if you don't have GA4 installed before July 1st, there's going to be a gap in your data from the time that Universal Analytics stops to the time you turn on GA4. So one of the first things, and Google's kind of forcing us all to migrate anyways, but you made a really valid point, Ray, and that is, it's going to stop recording, but it doesn't go away until January. So we have a little bit of time to decide what are we going to do with that historical Universal Analytics data. And to your point, Ray, if you're not, an e-commerce site where all this stuff is like super critical, if you're like a typical B2B, you could literally just go in and do dumps into spreadsheets and have that as a record versus trying to move all your data over to BigQuery or some other data warehouse. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. You nailed it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's jump over to actually GA4. But before I do that, I'll actually share my screen here in a minute. Andrea, looks like some stuff's going on in the chat. Do we have some questions that Ray and I can answer before we actually jump over to GA4?
Yeah, one question that's come up is, can I use my existing UA tracking code with GA4?
So no. Right. I think it's a totally different universal, UA tracking code is totally different. And from what I understand, they can both be running simultaneously. I think we know that. But I think, Ray, correct me if I'm wrong. Once you've made the cutover and once we're done with Universal Analytics, we probably want to get that old UA code off the site, I'm guessing. What do you think?
Yeah, you do. And that tracking code's been available that they're using for GA4. It's called gtag.js. So that's been around a while. So that's what you need to make sure you have installed on there. But any tracking code on your site that says UA, that needs to go.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people actually, we were running into this with a client not too long ago where they had like 3 versions of their tracking code on their website and they were getting like triple hits, and this is on Universal Analytics. I think that kind of weirdness and wonkiness is going to go away with GA4. But I think I'm glad this question was asked, Andrea, because we all should go in and purge out the tracking code after July 1st, all the Universal Analytics code, 100% for sure. So great question. Any other ones, Andrea?
There has been some discussion in the chat, because GA4 is event-based rather than visit-based. There's some challenges with integration of third-party platforms like Pardot, Salesforce. So not really a question, but a discussion. Maybe we have some resources.
Yeah, that's a great, if I'm understanding the question, there's these third parties that are driving, traffic, or we're trying to pass data back and forth. And, they probably built their integrations originally on, understanding Universal Analytics, which was session-based, and now we're event-based. And is that handshake working as well as it should? Is it creating false positives? Are we losing some of that attribution? I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure there are challenges, but one thing that I will say I feel is critical that I was going to mention at some point anyways, is UTMs are still going to be really, really important. So I do believe that, some people think that we won't need UTMs as much. I think, and UTMs are the way to guarantee that we're able to track the things that we want to track through the system. And we can actually do some customization in our GA4 reports if we've got a good UTM structure in place. With that said, and we don't have time to have a UTM discussion today, but man, getting your UTMs consistent is one of the biggest tracking problems we see B2B companies face today, because they don't have a policy around nomenclature. What equals source? Are you using capital letters? Are you using dashes or underscores? All that stuff. You need to have a policy around those things. That's going to help the tracking back and forth, especially when we deal with B2B buyers that are going to be touching our site at different stages of the buyer journey, multiple people within an account. That's the only way to get good, clear tracking, is to start with really good UTMs. But great discussion.
To Dan's point on the meeting chat, Dan, there's if you go into the forums for GA4, there's a lot of chatter right now about Pardot and not playing well with, GA4 not playing well with Pardot. And we're having issues ourselves right now with GA4 and Facebook paid tracking codes, where it shows up as organic social rather than paid social. So I hope, my fingers are crossed, that there will be solutions shortly. But there are challenges, and I think Google's pretty well aware of them, but I haven't seen any movement yet. And there's some rough spots right now. So
Ray, that sounds like a future blog post for us. How to make GA4 work with some of these players like Pardot. I think that'd be a great blog for us to come up with. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. I just looked at the clock. It's already 12:34 here. So, and I know we've got more to share. Ray, let's do a quick tour. And I'm hoping that I'm sharing my screen with GA4. Okay, awesome. One of the first things I noticed, Ray, is why in the world do I have this red bar at the top of our Google Analytics? Because I know we've done everything we're supposed to do to get our GA4 set up. What's up with the red bar?
Yeah, so if you hit that button, it says complete setup. And I hope that this is going to go away here shortly. But they're prodding you. I don't think right now we as an agency, we're running any Google ads. So so they're prompting us to go connect the two. And it's very powerful to connect the two. But right now we're not running anything bottom of funnel. So I think that complete setup is going to be there until we start running ads. I think Google's editorial comment, and they're going to keep coming at me, and you've already heard a couple. But Google is, trying to monetize you all the time, 24/7. So they're trying to prod us to, run ads. And we're not going to. So we're going to have to live with that complete setup and some of the other things in here.
Yeah. So we're completely set up as far as we want to be. So, yeah, we're happy with where we are. So you might see this too and feel compelled that, there's something missing, when the reality is they're just trying to get you to do things you may not need to do. That's what that's all about. Another thing, this is a huge upgrade in my opinion. Their search engine is more, their new search feature in GA4 is so much better than Universal Analytics. You can ask it questions, which I love. Like, for example, if I wanted to see, how many conversions last month, and it'll tell me right there. Yeah.
So
how many conversions we had last month.
Instead of clicking through 10 screens to get to where we want. I mean, this is a vast improvement. This alone is huge.
How many conversions last week? So that's really, really cool. I love that. So I can just get to the answer. If I'm not trying to build a report, I just want the data. GA4 is really great at that. Another thing with the search engine, when you go look at it, you can come down here, and we didn't talk about this. I meant to a little bit when we were going through the comparisons, but you can just click here and go to more suggestions, and that takes you to the insights. And then you've got all of these pre-built questions here that you can get to the same kind of answer to pretty quickly. And Ray, that reminds me, we're going to talk about templates. Where are all the templates over in GA4?
So you're going to about to be underwhelmed, but if you go over to the Explore tab on the left,
That's
there
right.
you go.
Yeah.
And they've got a bunch of pre-formatted template gallery, which may or may not help you. You can do this in a dashboard once you get the data flowing, whether it's Looker Studio or somebody else's. So, but there's really not a lot of flexibility right out of the box.
Certainly not the same as Universal Analytics, right?
Yeah, and you just got to remember, this is not, I've heard this term used. Chris Penn, who's an incredible numbers analytics guy, he calls this, GA4 is the business intelligence engine, Looker Studio, or your dashboard. And he's not a Looker Studio fan at all. That is your reporting engine. So your reporting engine is where you'll find you get the data flowing from GA4, and then you can manipulate and make things look presentable.
Let's show them how to do like some real work. So what is something we can go do and show, like maybe a content marketing report or something like that, Ray? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's take a look and see how our blogs are performed from the beginning of the year.
Okay, so walk me through it.
Yeah, so let's first of all go to screen and page path.
That's under acquisition engagement, right? Yep, here it is right here.
There we go, page screens. Yeah, let's hit that.
Which sounds weird, doesn't it? Page screens and not pages or sessions. Again, it's a different data model.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do a bigger data set. This is another thing that I do like. This is an upgrade with GA4. This calendar feature, I don't know about you guys, but that old calendar feature on Universal Analytics, I would screw that thing up every time I was trying to build out a report. This one is way more modern and super helpful.
And click the compare button really quick, Paul, just to show.
Yeah, it's much better than what Universal Analytics has. So if I want to just look at last 12 months, I can go and just click there, click apply. Now I've got the last 12 months. And then boom, here's all of our pages for the last 12 months. And so where do we go from here, Ray?
Well, let's while we've got everything here, so you see the page path and screen class there and the data beneath it. Let's add a secondary dimension.
Okay.
And notice it doesn't say secondary dimension. So let's hit that plus sign there.
Yep.
And let's take a look at traffic source. So let's see where our traffic came from.
Oh,
and
this is another thing that's really cool, right? Because now I can look at first source, or I can just look at source medium, which is something we couldn't do before on Universal Analytics, right?
Well, we could do it, but it took a lot of typing and it got better over the years. But in the beginning, you had to use regex, regular expressions, which were this is just a lot easier. So look at that. There, I've got it already. So that's pretty cool. But you know what, Paul, you said something right. Maybe I said this. Let's take a look at the blog. So let's go. Paul, I'm trying to get my screen. I can't see what you're doing. Paul, let's go over. Let's go over to the top right where that pencil is. And first of all, let's make sure we got the right metrics before we do anything.
Okay. So I know that we've got, right now we're looking at all the pages on our site. We're looking at it by first source, which, how many people, for example, came from Twitter to our website on this particular page is an example of that. And I know that we can change these columns, but, Ray, we talked about showing people how to do that yesterday. I think for the sake of time, we should probably just move on. But I will tell you, all of these can be changed, these columns. You do that right here by clicking on this pencil, and then you can go in and change the arrangement of these things. You can add different things for sure. Super simple to do. And then you can save that as a report. But if we wanted to just look at blog traffic, like you were talking about, Ray, like you showed me yesterday, I just come over here to this search engine. If you got this little search bar right here, I can just type in blog. Really important. For those of you that are thinking about your hierarchy, you want your content segmented in subfolders. All of our blog content is in a blog subfolder, makes it super easy to do this. So now what we basically have just done is filtered out super simply and fast all of our blog content over the last year, and now we're looking at it by first user source. So we can really see kind of what's going on. And then we can, again, adjust these columns if we want. If we wanted conversions to be right here, we could do that. We can certainly sort by conversions by clicking this little arrow, and it'll sort by conversions. If we wanted to filter out just Google data or just LinkedIn data or Twitter data or direct data, how would we do that, Ray?
Let's go over on the top right, which is behind my screen.
Yeah, this little pencil button, right?
Yeah, and let's click down there and let's modify the report a little bit.
Yeah, we can add a filter and then simply do source. So I'm going to do source here, first source user. And then we get this great little drop down. So if we want to do multiple things like, hey, I want Google and LinkedIn, I can do that. Or if I just want Google, I can do that. Click apply. And then over here, it's just going to give me all of the Google data. Now we can't see it because I went over and adjusted that, but I'll show you, I'll get over there again by just going over here to first source again. Oops, got to type in source the right way. Did I do that right? Actually, I think it went down the right.
Yeah, medium source. There you go. You got, yeah.
Oh yeah, first user.
And you can scroll down.
Yeah, there it is.
Sure. Yeah.
And you'll see that this is just the Google data now. So
I would recommend, I mean, the takeaway from this part is that go play with it.
Yeah.
Go play with it. Unless you add filters, which is another, and I would suggest that you create a test account and call it GA4 test. It's a new property. You have to hook it up to Tag Manager. But if you're not going to add any filters on the settings dial, man, go in and play. You're not going to break anything. But you'll find it's actually it's a lot easier than Universal Analytics. And I never thought I would say that. A year ago, well, you'll see a slide coming up here. Do we want to transition to the deck now, Paul?
Yeah, let's do that. So I know that was kind of a quick lay of the land. The dimensions, while I've got this over here, this is where you can go in and change what you want to see over here, or the metrics rather. So if I wanted to move conversions up or any of that, it's super easy to do. Just for the sake of time, we can't walk you through all of that. So let me pull up your presentation. And Ray, sorry to put you on the spot, but we're like 15 minutes left here.
Yeah,
so let's really hit the high spots if you don't mind.
Not at all. So let's keep going here. Again, why GA4? It's a mobile first world for everybody but us. Most of us our clients, our agency clients transact on desktop. They do their stuff at work. They're high consideration purchases. GA4 was designed for mobile devices in mind. Universal Analytics was our switchblade. Google took away our switchblade, or it's taken away July 1st, 2023.
Hey, Ray, let me just jump in real quick. These slides are on the agenda. You'll see it says Ray slides. They're a PDF there that you can grab later.
And that's me there crying like a baby when Google said they were taking away my switchblade. I added this quote, Chaucer, familiarity breeds contempt. Lack of familiarity made me really frustrated and angry. And again, Heraclitus said, there's nothing permanent except change. So get over it, old man. So the advantage is, we've talked about this, event-based tracking, much more flexibility and accuracy. And, if you're stripping your website of all this code, extraneous code, you're actually going to speed it up. And one of the cool things is, the tagging is done on a separate platform, which is called Google Tag Manager. We'll do a brief overview of that when we get to it. So the breakdown, and again, we talked about this, it's 3 engines, 3 disparate pieces of software you have to learn, which is 2 more than I ever wanted to learn right now. Tag Manager, Analytics, Google Data Studio, or the platform of your choice. You need to be proficient in all 3, or somebody on your team needs to be proficient in at least one of them, or you hire an agency or get a consultant. That's the best way about it. Now we have to learn AI too. It's like, oh my gosh, my whole world is upside down.
Why did they throw AI and GA4 at us in the same year?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was kind of a Luddite. Now I'm on the AI bandwagon, thanks to you, because you've been beating me about the head and showing me. But it's like, really, did I need this right now? So this is some of the nomenclature just to get you started. We talk about tags and events. Everything is an event. And by the way, if you get a report from your agency or a contractor and they talk to you about events, your website had X amount of events every night, Who the hell cares? Events are not part of your objectives or KPIs. And that is a metric in there, but nobody cares. What you care about, what is the KPIs? What are your key performance objectives? And what are the metrics that support that? So
yeah. Hey, Ray, let me jump in there real quick because I want you just said something that was worth the whole price of admission today, which was free, but this was super valuable. And that is, this is an events-based platform, but it really is key for all of us to go analyze our buyer journey and what are the things that we want buyers to do on our web presence across their journey. And we want to track those using events. And that's super, I was going to say super easy to do, but that's something that the flexibility of GA4 gives us that Universal Analytics didn't. So when I showed you the number of conversions earlier that we're getting on our website, those were different types of conversions that I could have filtered down to the different things, but all that, those represented steps in our buyer journey for our customers that they're going through. And we've been able to set those up as conversions, much more elegant, much more clear than what we could do on Universal Analytics.
Yeah, and that brings me down to the bottom here. A conversion now is just, it's an event, and it's an event that's marked as a conversion, an event that you have determined is very, very important, essential to your buyer journey.
Yeah. For example, in our business, we're ungating all of our content, something you hear us preach about all the time, but I still want to know how many people are clicking to get the ungated content that we're providing. And so I've got that set up as an event on our website.
Yeah. And then the conversion would be the download.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's another, exactly. 100%. Yeah.
So we can calculate that conversion rate. So this is and a customer that is engaged has performed one or more of the following. They've been on a page view. Great. They've got a page view, one page on the site or more, greater than 10 seconds, a page view that resulted in a conversion or a session with two or more page views. I don't know why. I apologize for that. 2 or more page views, a session with 2 or more page views, not 2 or more sessions. Bounce rate, again, that's an older metric. It was put back in, but basically it is now the inverse of the engagement rate. So if you've got an engagement rate of 63%, that means your bounce rate is 47%.
Right.
But it really is kind of meaningless or superfluous in this environment now.
Yeah, it's not the same as what old bounce rate is. It's a totally different equation.
Yeah. And then the B2B engagement rate benchmark, right now, you're shooting for something higher than 63%, of any one of the 3 of the above. So this graphic is just showing you how you can get in and around the Insights tab. That uses machine learning. The longer Google Analytics 4 has been recording data. And when this announcement came out 2 years ago, we immediately went and set up GA4s for every one of our accounts and made sure they were running parallel with Universal Analytics, but we wanted to make sure that they were recording data. So that was the big thing. And then those websites, as you plug more stuff in here, like conversions, the website uses machine learning and can give you more insights that will be actionable. So it's something important to keep in mind. And this is to show you how to get to the templates. You hit the Explore tab, and you can, these templates that are pre-built, you can then customize those. And then this is an example of one report I'm doing for a client. And basically we are looking at, you can create custom audience. We wanted to have an audience of recently active users to see how many clicked, scrolls, how many started the form and how many submitted. So you can see only 25% of the people that started our forms completed it. And if you saw my client's form, you would go, oh my gosh, there's a lot of fields there's a lot of fields they have to navigate through. So that's something we're working on.
Yeah, this is a great example of flexibility. We talked about at the beginning how Universal Analytics was simple but not flexible, and GA4 is super flexible but not very simple. This is a great example of that because you can get to just about any answer that you want if you know how to use it. And this is super valuable because oftentimes we're trying to convince clients to get rid of fields on their forms, and a report like this helps us prove too many fields are impacting our conversion rates. And then you can see it, make the change, and then easily see the lift, or whatever intelligence you want to gather from that.
Yeah. And I'm going to go back to what I said before. The best way to get familiar with this, play with it, log in, play. You're not going to break anything. And this is showing how you get to, so you hit that little bar, that little magic wand at the top, that brings a drop down to traffic analytics, and then boom, look at that, right? 2 clicks, actually 3. And this is another real quick, data insight that I was able to get in 2 clicks. I think
right. And that's by clicking on the pencil, right? At the top, right, Ray?
Yep. This is another one for a different client, same thing, form starts. This one, it just shows the conversion funnel. How many I've got, let's see, on this particular one, 69 form starts, 29 completed the form. So I can see the funnel all the way down.
Right. Ray, that reminds me of something else I wanted to touch on, because we've talked a lot about Looker Studio and dashboards and why you need dashboards. And so one thing that's become evident to me is having a dashboard is helpful because it gives you the pretty reports, the high level reports. It integrates all of your data together from multiple sources. But it's, dashboards are not meant to go do the drill down work like what you're showing us here, Ray. And that's where I think GA4 is a leg up over Universal Analytics, because you can drill down and you can get to like the dashboard's going to let you see things that will cause you to ask questions. GA4, once you know how to use it, is going to help you get to the answer. Does that make sense, Ray?
That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah. So this is an example of a dashboard, just a widget on a dashboard that we created for a client. And if you notice on the bottom, the second column, second row, last column, it says event count, 932,311. I'm going to have the head of the person that created this widget. Oh, that was me. That's worthless.
Yeah,
that's
a meaningless number.
Yeah, about that. So
that's just like, literally, for those of you guys that have been around long enough, like the very first analytics around was called server-side analytics. And they literally, server-side analytics monitored every literally bit that happened on your website, from an image uploading to a CSS file getting added. All those were called hits back in the early days. Events are very similar to hits. They're meaningless. That's why you've got to go in and create the buyer journeys, and then you get real data out of it that helps you, because everything is an event. Everything.
Yeah, there you go. You took the words out of my mouth. So let's talk about Tag Manager. I have just a quick graphic here and we'll move on. But it's just showing that Google Tag Manager is on a Google server and you're configuring that, and there's calls going back and forth from GA4 to Tag Manager. So there's all the configuring you're doing in Tag Manager, and there's a lot, as I'll show you in the next slide. None of that is impacting the speed or the efficiency of your website any longer. You're not stuffing your website with a lot of code. Now in Tag Manager, that's why I talk about someone's got to be proficient in knowing Boolean parameters, if, and, ors. It really helps, but these all have to be configured in Tag Manager. So it gets kind of tricky. This is for a small website, but this just shows you how a fully configured Tag Manager account would look like for the triggers for us.
Yeah. So the difference is events are things that GA4 is tracking. Tag Manager is how you configure those events into things that are meaningful for you to look at. Am I saying that right, Ray?
Yeah, it's the configuration. Again, I use Chris Penn's term, the configuration engine. And then this is an example of this. This is Looker Studio, some of the things you can do with it. I'm not a big Looker Studio fan. I've been using dashboards. And again, the advantage of the dashboard, I can pull in Facebook, LinkedIn. I can put a summary tab at the top and show my client every month what's happening across all the channels, and then we can dig down within the dashboard. Again, you're going to get a copy of this. We're pushing dashboards really hard today.
Yeah, well, it's the reason for that is that there were things inside of Universal Analytics that kind of felt like a dashboard, and you're just not going to have that data easily available in GA4. And so if you haven't switched to some kind of a dashboard view, now is the time to really think about that.
Yeah, especially, I get talking about data streams, like pulling Bing data in. Bing right now is ripping it up. Bing ads, they're ripping it. I mean, we're spending a lot more money across the board for our clients on Bing. So your next steps is, are you ready for July 1st? Do you have a measurement plan? Do your KPIs and metrics reflect your business objectives? If so, then you need to align your tags, your events, triggers, and conversions with that. And you need to make sure you've transitioned your goals from UA4, from UA to GA4. Part of that is configuring that in Tag Manager and then going into GA4 and taking those events and just marking them with it's pretty easy to do, to marking them as conversions. Do you have a dashboard solution, whether it's Looker Studio or something else? And what are you going to decide to do about your historical universal analytics data? The easy button is CSV. The hard button or harder is SQL, big query, and you're going to need somebody that knows how to use SQL.
Yeah. So we have a service that I'm just going to, because we're running out of time.
Yep.
We can help do a GA4 audit. One thing I commit to you guys in this Demand Gen Jam session community is this is a sales free zone. So I'm not here to tell you that you need to have us help you do any of this. But if you need some help and want to talk to me, just ping me and I can talk you through some of the things that we've got available or point you to other resources. I do want to share one other thing as we literally have 1 minute to go. On your agenda, there's Ray's slide right here, Ray's slides that he just walked through. Ray mentioned we have a ton of resources down here. Some of them are training resources. Some of them are past Demand Gen Jam session events. Most of this is very weighty towards the GA4, but this right here, please check it out. This is our migration guide, and it's yours free. So it's more just more detail than what we could actually go through today, but a great resource for you to check out and just understand things you need to be thinking about to get ready. Again, you can get that right at the bottom of the agenda for today, along with a whole host of other things. And so it's literally the top of the hour. And so I appreciate everybody's time. If there are questions, I think maybe we can stick around, Ray, for another 5 minutes, if that's okay with you. If anybody else needs to run, feel free to jump. Thank you so much. Remember the July Demand Gen Jam session, July the 12th, we'll be talking about customer interviews and how to get really great insights by interviewing your customers. I've got a great expert that's going to come in and help us understand how to do that. So love to have you here for July. And you guys have a great rest of your day, rest of your week. And feel free to stick around. We'll answer a couple more questions and then we'll drop. Take care, everybody. See ya.